Welcome, everybody, to the Scars to Stars podcast. It's Dina with the Realize Foundation, and I'm here today with a special guest, Treyonda Towns, who wrote in our Scars to Stars Volume 2, and we are catching up today to see what she is up to in the world. So,
Oh,
Treyonda, tell us a little bit about what's going on.
yes. Well, hello, and thank you once again for inviting me into this amazing space. Hello, everyone. My name is Treyonda Towns. I am the CEO and founder of the Genevieve Towns Foundation, where we provide trauma-informed, non-traditional healing spaces to peers, loved ones that have lost a loved one through violence. We also provide resources, education, and awareness to the community.
That's awesome. Do you want to tell everybody or remind everybody why you do what you do?
Why I do what I do. Well, I've always have done what I've done, and I had a partner with me in that, and that was to provide advocacy to those at-risk youth, single teen moms, um, and women that was experiencing domestic violence. So at some point, I was always a advocate for domestic violence, sexual assault. Um, And in that, my home space was like the safe space where my daughter always had someone or brought someone home that needed to have an experience to feel that they were worthy to have an experience with someone, be a voice for them.
Mhm.
Um, and just as a mom, I wanted to have that space, right? So we always had people over, pizza just hanging. Um, because I just wanted to be able to have that place. I didn't have that going home. Growing up, I was in a home that was just on edge. It was full of fear, things like that. And so when I became a parent, I wanted to provide a different space. I wanted my children to feel welcome, to have a voice, respectively, because that could go wrong, and that did go wrong sometimes, but to have that space. And so it became a tragedy, um, where now I'm in a state of triumph that came out of a season of tragedy where my daughter's life was ended violently at the hands of her peers. And so, in that, the Genevieve Towns Foundation became a legacy um, motivation in honor of her, in the heart, and what she did and what we did together. So, yeah.
Um, so what you were talking when we before we started about, coming out of the winter season into spring and how, some people maybe withdraw during the winter or have
Mhm.
a struggle of some sort and then coming into the spring, and tell us more about what that means to you and how you see the spring being more of a light for people, I guess.
Mhm. Well, I guess I can connect that with the underlying tag of the JBD Foundation, and that is, where do we go from here, right? Um, for the most part, as a person, we just automatically we get up and we go after things happen to us, but then things happen to us, right? And unfortunately, we don't have that part of our regular regimen of um, disaster, relief, or disaster control, or trauma control, right? There was a time that didn't even want to be acknowledged or respected, especially in certain communities and certain demographics, because it was assumed that the resilience that was being displayed was just an automatic of the makeup of that
Mhm.
culture. Um, and even myself, as a mother, I wasn't given the benefit of the doubt that um, I could be suffering or will deal with anything related to trauma around that, right? That wasn't even a word that was even spoken. So the depression, the PTSD, the guilt, the all those things, right? When we talk about grief, they give us a list of 7, and unfortunately, um, I have to say that list does not go from 1 to 7, right? You can fall into any of those spectrums when it comes to grief. And so we know the winter time and the fall time is kind of the time where things kind of is doing this transition. The old is fading out, dying away, hibernation, all those things we see in the physical. But what does that mean when it comes to us as physical beings and in the natural human? The days are shorter, right? Nights are longer. It's cold outside. Perfect opportunity gateway. I don't have to make excuses for not wanting to go to the party or to show up for the interview or to cook the dinner or to clean my home or to even want to shower, right? Some of us may be going through those in the background and to be the imposter because, we're inside in the indoors. And so now that we're transitioning, and even though our weather has been a little bit different, right? Our seasons have been different. They're not what and how they have been. What does that look like? What do we do now? Where do we go from here, right? And I guess one of the biggest thing is just sharing with the young lady yesterday is just acceptance, right? Accepting that this is where I am. This is and this is what I feel right now, and it's okay. But do I have to stay here? And if, how do I get to the next?
Mhm.
And so each individual, it's different, right? Depending on your support system, depending on where you are in your health and physically, right? Depending on where you are with the resources at hand. Um, and so step by step. But I believe the first step is just accepting and being okay with that. So that whatever the device, the tool, or the resource is to take that next step, um, it can be grasped, right?
Mhm.
It will work. It can
Yeah.
be identified. Mhm.
I love the way you talk about the next, and I know that was the title of your chapter, or part of the title of your chapter in
Mhm.
the Scars to Stars book. And I think it's a lot of us talk about change. A lot of us talk about, how to move forward, but you have a unique way of saying that and talking about the next, whatever it is, the next. And I
Mhm.
like that because I've never heard anyone else explain it that way. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if you have a story behind that or if it was just something that seemed natural to you to explain,
Mhm.
what you were going through or how you were getting out of what you were going through.
Mhm.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I think the next was just kind of like a natural way of me kind of processing,
Mhm,
right? Because we do a lot of time we say we move forward or we're changing, but what's in the middle of that? How do you get to that change, right? How do you move forward? And
mhm,
so for me, in the process, because I had been going through a process, I finally had to stop and allow my own process and healing to take place and really truly not just on the front because I was in survival for everyone around me that depended on me, but for my own self and being accepting of that I deserve that same healing, right? I deserve that same, but how do that trigger? So it was kind of like, oh, the next, right? Um, do I stay here and keep um, acting like I'm okay? Or do I actually step into that welcome place of all that was drawn to me, or I was drawn to, that was willing to support me so that I can have that same liberty of healing and joy again and laughter again and wanting to be out and talking about it, right? Sharing, not keeping it inside and it become like an eternal battle with myself, especially when it came to things that didn't even have anything to do with me, right?
Mhm.
Your your book project, thank you so much for you stepping into your next, right, and sharing that and inviting us into that, um, because I fought, like, it was hard. You walked with me a couple times to even to be able to release, right? And anything that came about, that was my excuse to say, okay, next time, until it just went away. So we know that's part of like that trauma process, right? And so that in itself helped me to be free and to walk and say, hey, it's time to go into the next, right? Because if I'm living this and dealing with this, someone else, right, that may never even get out of the doors, may never even have an encounter with someone physically, but if this is a vehicle, and it still was very small, because when I look back, I think each time it was it was cut off right at that intense pains point, right? But the fear of what that looks like, right? Of how I will be able to continue to process that, kind of caused me a pause. Um, and so that's where that next, and even in that chapter, I I was in a position of facing um, some areas of my life with my mom, um, and she was going through some things I had no idea, and ended up being a part of those last hours and days with her. Um, but it was bittersweet because she transitioned. But before she transitioned, healing took place for both of us. Forgiveness took place for both of us, right? I had an experience with her that no one had an experience with her. Um, I mean, a full experience, and then she was gone. And so I hold that close, because the next for me, um, that allowed me to say, you know what, it's time to show up my full self. I was only showing up as parts of me. But there was a whole nother part of me that I held back because I felt it was safe. Right? It was safe. The ouches would go away and the punches would stop. The punches of life, the ouches of life, the ouches of circumstances. And no,
Yeah,
that
it's
didn't happen at all. Yes.
it's true. I think a lot of us hold things back for several reasons. I think probably the biggest one is shame and self-doubt. And I think a lot of the other reasons are that we we don't feel confident enough to talk about it, or we don't feel like it's okay to talk about it, or
Mhm.
we're not sure how it will come across to people.
Mhm.
Um, and what I learned in a conversation recently is that a lot of times when we are people pleasers, or we are just trying to take care of everyone around us or cater to people around us, and we're suppressing things for ourselves that need to be addressed,
Mhm.
and we kind of cover it up by taking care of other people. And I've
Mhm.
done that my whole life, and I think it's because you either don't realize. I mean, in my situation, there were things I never realized that affected me in my life the way they
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
Um, and not that anybody did anything intentional to hurt me, I don't think, but there's still subliminal things, there's,
Mhm.
unconscious things that happen that you don't realize how they affect you.
Mhm.
And I think that being a people pleaser or being in the hospitality industry where you're constantly worried about other people and not yourself,
Mhm.
it allows you to just stuff it down and keep going.
Right.
And it's like you said, you get to a point where you have to process this stuff for yourself to be
Mhm.
able to get to the next, to be
Mhm.
able to keep going. And I
Yes.
think that was a revelation for me just this week. So we're
Mm.
constantly evolving and getting to the next in our lives, whatever that is. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a big revelation when you finally understand that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of like stumbling upon that revelation about just life in itself, right? We're talking about like the winter is going and now the spring is coming. So, with that being a reminder that there's always an ending, right? Which sometimes we dread because we don't want to let go, or it's hard to let go. Um, Not realizing that we're keeping the beginning from happening, and so that has become a part of that same um, repertoire as I use, like when I think about the next, it's like every ending there's a new beginning, right? Even in darkness there's the light, right? We talk about the written word. It says there was a void and there was nothing, right? It was a dark space, and then it was spoken, let there be light, right? And then things were created. We were created. The lotus flower is the most beautiful flower in the world, but it's created in mud and in darkness, right? The diamond, right? And so all those things, even in those hard times, that we feel like we're never going to come out of it. Um, there's a time that I believe a window that if we can find just enough, just a little bit of strength, because I'm not going to say if we want to, because no one wants to be in a bad space, right? We all want to be better and do better. But if we could just get that muster, that just enough strength, right, to get that toe or that finger through that little peephole, and have that sensation that causes us to want more, so that we evolve more and come out more, even like spaces like this. And um, with the project, right? The Skies of Stars, that it's just that window, that little light, right, that some of us have had. And I'm hoping more will show up as it continues to evolve,
Mhm.
to get that fresh wind, right? To have that jolt, that defibrillator to like spark us and say, hey, whew, okay, let's see what this new beginning is going to bring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's the past few months I've had several people who've written in our books reach out to me.
Mhm.
So if to put in perspective, we've had about 54 chapters, I think,
Mhm.
in the 3 books that we've published. They've all been bestsellers, and they are all different stories of overcoming adversity. So if you're listening to this and you're like, what are you even talking about? So the books, people tell a story of a hardship or a challenge in their life and how they overcame it. And the whole purpose is for someone to pick up this book or read it on Kindle or wherever they might see it, um, and have hope that someone else has been where they are, and that there is hope that they too can get through whatever this is. And all of our stories are very different. There's business, financial stories, there's suicide stories, there's addiction, there's abuse, there's loss and grief. There's stories about everything you can imagine. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that they are not alone. I mean, that's the whole purpose of what we do, is
Mhm.
how can we reach more people in a place where they don't feel like it's okay to talk about it. They
Mhm.
don't think anyone would understand. They don't think that there's anybody out there experiencing what they're experiencing.
Mhm.
Um, how do we let them know that that is not true? And there
Yes.
are other people that are willing to have these conversations. And I
Mhm.
will tell you that anyone listening doesn't know, I had a suicide attempt that I never spoke about for 23 years.
Mhm.
And in all of those years, I always say, if I would have picked up a book like that and been able to connect with somebody who had survived a suicide attempt, I wouldn't have been quiet that long.
Right.
But I just didn't know anybody else who had been through what I've been through. And I
Mhm.
did feel like I was the only one, even
Mhm.
though I knew that wasn't, subconsciously I knew that wasn't true. But
Mhm.
it's still the the um the opportunity never presented itself for me to feel like that wasn't true. You know what I mean? Like you just have this mindset about it, and you're like, I went through this horrible thing, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, Mine was self-inflicted, but other people's are not self-inflicted, but they still went through something horrible. And
Mhm.
how do we get to a place where we can talk about it?
Mhm.
And I wasn't the person that went to therapy. I didn't seek out help.
Mhm.
I just dealt with it on my own, and that's not a good way to handle it. It's part of why I do what I do in the world today.
Right.
Um, and it makes me emotional because we have heard from so many people over the last 4 years who have gotten the message that they're not alone, and they've gotten help, or they've spoken up, or they've talked to someone who's been involved in our organization, and it's changed their life.
Mhm.
And so the people who come and write their stories usually are like, I'm going to write my story so I can help other people. And in the process, it usually helps them too,
Yes.
more than they think. But it absolutely helps other people. And I can't tell you the the Facebook comments and the texts I've received that say, I bought the book to support the organization, and then I shared it with somebody and it changed this person's life. And they come back and tell me, but I don't know who it is or what their story is, so I don't always know the context. But I know that we've reached people all over the world because we get royalties from all over the world.
Mhm.
So, as far as Australia or Japan or the UK. And
Mhm.
so I just wanted to take a minute to share a little more about why we do these books, and
Right.
why it matters, and what it means to people.
Mhm.
And so, if you're listening and you have a story you want to share, please reach out. You can
Mhm.
go to our website at Realize Foundation. I'll put it up for you. Realizefoundation.org. And on the Scars to Stars page, there's a place where you can submit your information. And then I'll reach out to you, and we're going to start the next book in July.
Mhm.
And the only other thing I want to mention real quick is that this book project is about a 12-week process, and it is a process where you have the support of a book coach, you an author coach, you have a support of an editor. We do all the publishing stuff and all that for you. We give you a PDF of your chapter at the end so you can use it however you'd like. So there's a lot of support through this. And the reason I bring that up is because I've had two different people who've written in Scars to Stars lately reach out
Mhm.
to me and say, Dina, I was part of this other book project, and I just want to tell you how much better your process is than
Mhm.
what I went through with someone else. And I
Mhm.
don't say that to be negative about anything, but I just say, I personally wrote in 2 anthology books where I wrote my chapter, I submitted it, there was no editing, I never met the other people in the book, there was no marketing help, there was no bestseller status, there was none of all of that other stuff that we do. And it's
Mhm.
part of why we do what we do, is because I've had those experiences too. And I think when you're writing something so personal as what we're writing,
Connection.
it's really important to have the support throughout the process. And
Yeah.
some of our authors had never written anything before or published anything before. And so it's
Mhm.
it's really important to have that support behind you when you're writing something so hard.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I know you were going through a really tough time when you wrote your chapter, Treyonda.
Mhm.
So I hope that you felt at least some of that support.
I did. I felt supported in any area where it wasn't, it had nothing to do what was offered for me. It was just being entangled in the middle of what that process of that experience, right, was at that time. Um, and so, once again, I thank you. I thank you for the work. I thank you even for just sharing now as well, because I think in my last interview, I touched lightly on like what my experience, right?
Mhm.
And I guess I'm coming from like just being from a culture where what happens here stays here, right? That those things we didn't talk about, those things we didn't acknowledge, right? Everything else was accepting, but mental wellness or those ideations of self-harm. Whereas we're in a time where statistics shows that all that's in void because the numbers are up there,
Yeah.
not just for adults, for youth and for young people. And so, sit here today, just speaking in a voice and a call out to any young person or youth that's struggling, to let them know that you're not alone, right? You can make it. Like, there is someone that they don't know what you're going through, but they've went through an experience that have brought them to that place of struggling with that decision. So please just reach out, find someone that you feel safe with, that you could reach out to. And for the adults around them, pay attention to the signs, right? I was 9 or 10, right? And I had went in my mother's medicine cabinet, which was always full of medications. And I took a whole bunch of stuff and I was slipping away out of here, right? And because of the cultural things, there was no attention. Whatever was going on at home, no one even considered. Right. I just got reprimanded for not hearing the door. I couldn't stay awake. And, but I was fading away out of here because I had consumed some things, dealing with some internal things out of some things that had happened to me, other people's secrets, right? And so, it took a long time to even acknowledge that, right? And that was part of the healing gap with me and my mother. Like, these things are happening to me. As you as a parent, you should know.
Yeah.
Um, but part of the acceptance and forgiveness and healing was that she was dealing with her own pain, her own abuse, her own things of trying to exist and be validated in this world after her own stuff. And so, there's peace there today. But once again, I just call out to all young people and youth and adults around them, please pay attention to the signs, right? Don't take it personal, because it's not about you. It's about that person at that moment. It's about that young person that's struggling and trying to make sense about the world that they exist in. So please, on their behalf, reach out to realizefoundation.org. Please reach out to us. And you're not alone, right? In your community somewhere, how we can help you. And even if it goes with you sharing your story, because
Mhm.
you too, your story is invaluable. We can't become adults if we're not children and teens and young adults first. And so with
Yeah.
that.
That's really true, and we do have some partners that work with teens um, at the Realize Foundation. So if you have a teen who's struggling, or you are a teen that's struggling, reach out to us, and we'll put you in touch with the right people. Um, we don't we don't put our books in schools or promote them to young people, because some of the content is more adult. But I think that also, there are teens that are going through very adult situations. And so however we can help, or however we can put you in touch with, we have two other people that have organizations specifically for teens that are involved in our organization. I'd be happy to introduce you to them if that's what you need. So Treyonda, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me today, because it's always a pleasure to get to catch up with you.
Yes. Same here. Same here.
Awesome. Well, if you're listening, please reach out to us. Go to our website. We have resources, we have videos, we have a whole YouTube channel of interviews and conversations. And maybe they can be helpful to you, and you're welcome to also share them with someone maybe that is in your life and struggling with something specific. So Thank
Mhm.
you for listening, and we hope to see you in our community.
Yes.